Hello there, beautiful friends from around the world. I'm going to be your host, Blackenfist. And yes, I'm going to finally be talking about the new movie coming out next year. And honestly, the reason I haven't talked about it up to this point is because there hasn't been much to talk about, honestly. And quite honestly, there still isn't much to talk about. But there has been a couple things that have been released over the past couple weeks. Most notably, the release date for this movie, which is of course the Japanese release date, which is 25th of April next year. More notably, also the movie's runtime, which is 120 minutes, 2 hours. Now that would actually make this movie the longest Dragon Ball movie in history, even longer than the Battle of Gods Extended Edition, which was, of course, the longest movie up to that point. So if this movie really is 120 minutes, which there's a chance that perhaps not all the 120 minutes are going to be used, or that it's not going to be as long as that, because quite honestly, the movie is still a year away, and the runtime could definitely change from then. Not to mention that this number is from a Japanese movie website called Cinema City, and it could always be that they got the wrong runtime for this movie in their listings, which could happen as well. So I would call this runtime an unofficial runtime, but regardless of whether it is 120 minutes exactly, if it's around that runtime, then it would still be the longest Dragon Ball movie in history, even longer than the extended edition. It would be 15 minutes longer than the extended edition of Battle of Gods. The biggest thing that the runtime really tells me, perhaps, Toei Animation might be investing even more into this movie than Battle of Gods. Now, of course, because we know so little about this movie, it is hard to say how much they've actually invested in this movie, but I would have to speculate that they have invested more, considering that Battle of Gods was a success, and now that they have a precedent for the Dragon Ball franchise performance as a movie, I think that they will be a little bit less cautious to hold back with this movie, and perhaps that manifests itself in the longer runtime, which is what I'm thinking. But I also want to talk about Toriyama's own comments here. Toriyama has already had a short interview discussing this new movie, and quite honestly, he didn't reveal much because Toei Animation has pretty much told him to keep that stuff on lockdown for now. But he did say one thing. He said that he has purposefully increased the action sequences in this movie comparatively to Battle of Gods. Now, I'm quite happy with this decision, and my guess is that Toriyama, now that he has explored the more lighthearted and goofy side of Dragon Ball, now wants to get more down to the action-oriented side of Dragon Ball with this one, which quite honestly could prove to be a much more commercially successful move on Toei Animation and Akira Toriyama's part. So this movie could have a potential to be even more successful than the previous movie. So other than that, though, there isn't much other news to share. Of course, when the news comes out, I'll be sure to tell you, but that's kind of the reason why I haven't talked about this movie that much. There hasn't been a lot to talk about. And quite honestly, those are the only things worthwhile talking about this movie at this point. But until more news comes out, I'm Blackenfist, and I'm out, man.